Writing a PhD proposal that will get you noticed and making contact with the right supervisor are things that many prospective students really struggle with. This video will help to clarify some important do's and don'ts for those considering applying for a PhD. I'm Dr. Angela Gayton and I'm a lecturer in Applied Linguistics and Education here at the University of Glasgow. And I'm going to take you through some top tips for success based on the collective experience of the English language and linguistics staff and our current PhD students. I'll do this by outlining areas of good practice in developing your proposal and sharing it with potential supervisors, as well as common pitfalls that we see applicants making. First of all, some very general things to keep in mind. Do read the guidance that's available from the specific university that you're applying to about how to write a proposal and what the specific expectations are of this. You'll see that we have information on our PhD Applied Linguistics webpage that is essential reading for any applicant. For example, we state in our guidelines that proposals should be approximately 2,000 words in length, but we often receive proposals that have not at all adhered to this. Do not rush the process. Developing a strong PhD proposal takes time. Spend time reading widely around your area of interest and deciding on a worthwhile topic for investigation. The next area I'll focus on today is that of making contact with potential supervisors. This is something that students often struggle with, so it's worth paying particularly careful attention to. Do carry out extensive research as to who would be the best supervisor for you. Take ample time to look through staff profiles and explore their recent research publications. Do make clear in your initial email to them why you're contacting them specifically. Be as detailed as you can about why you think they would be suitable to supervise your project, with specific, not general, not vague, reference to their work. Make your email as tailored to that individual as possible. Doing so will help the staff member take notice of your email rather than disregarding it. Do manage your expectations of what you'll get back from a member of staff. We have very limited PhD places to offer, so can only move forward with proposals that are very closely coherent with our current research agendas. If we don't feel that a proposal we receive is relevant to us, then we won't be able to offer any feedback. Remember that if we do offer any feedback, it's extremely important to heed it clearly and to take it on board. Do not send your proposal to every single staff member in a department, and I cannot stress this enough. This doesn't improve your chances of finding a suitable supervisor. In fact, it can harm them. When an email has been sent randomly to everyone in a department, it suggests to the staff that the student has not taken the time to do their research and is not clear on who would be a good fit for them and why. Do not contact a member of staff with the expectation that they will have a project for you. Sometimes we have students emailing us who want us to suggest a project for them. We expect you to propose your own programme of research. I'll therefore now focus on some top tips for developing your research proposal. Once you've done a lot of reading in your chosen area of interest, you'll then want to write a clear and concise literature review section as part of your PhD proposal. Showing an understanding of the relevant literature for your field is, of course, a very important aspect of a PhD proposal. Do make sure to include a well-focused discussion of the literature, which outlines both seminal and up-to-date research in your field. Ensure that you critically evaluate rather than describe the literature. It's also important to show how your work is being informed by current areas of focus and debate in the field. Do not simply list a series of sources without showing how they connect with each other. Compare the following two examples of discussing multiple sources on a related issue. The first example presents information taken from two related sources but doesn't link them in any way. There's no effort made to show how the writer has made connections between their key claims and key findings to build a cohesive argument. The second example, taken from a published paper, is a much more integrated discussion of related sources, demonstrating how they connect with each other and how, taken together, the reader is making a claim about the state of knowledge and understanding in the field currently. It's this second approach that we would expect to see in a strong research proposal in the section which reviews relevant literature. Perhaps one of the most fundamental aspects of a good PhD proposal is being able to clearly establish a research gap. What is it that you want to do that hasn't yet been done? Do clearly state the gap that you're trying to fill and why you're trying to fill it. Crucially, focus on the why. It's not enough simply to say that this research has never been done in this specific context. You need to very, very clearly and persuasively outline why this research needs to be done. What value is there in doing this work in this specific context, and who will it benefit? Do not leave this element vaguely expressed or assume that the reader will be able to infer what the gap is and why research is needed to address it. Compare the following two examples. The first example is very representative of what we often see students write in their research proposals. They state a gap and then say that their research will fill it. What they often neglect, however, is the elaboration you can see in the second example. The authors have fully explained why they believe that their research, which will fill this gap, is actually needed. They've stated not only why this gap exists, but why it needs to be addressed. Again, this is the kind of detailed thinking and detailed justification we expect to see in a good research proposal. We would also expect to see indicative research questions as part of a good PhD proposal. Do present very clearly stated and achievable research questions which link to the gap that you've established and the methodology that you'll outline, and we'll come on to that in a second. Looking at examples in published academic literature for inspiration on how to articulate and present research questions can be a great idea. Do not ignore the importance of these. Take time to read and review them carefully to ensure that they're as clear and explicit for the reader as possible. They need to succinctly summarise what you want to investigate. Compare the following two examples. If you compare these two examples, you can see that the research questions in example 1 are very vaguely worded and don't clearly give an immediate sense of what's being researched, with which participants and in what context. The research questions in example 2 are clearly articulated and contain a great deal more detail to make a reader more concretely aware of what's being investigated. Having a strong, well-developed idea of your intended methodological approach shows that you have a good capacity for understanding the fundamental principles of research and how it's conducted. Do be as specific as you can about the methodological approach you intend to use. We accept that once the project starts, this may well evolve, but at the proposal stage, we want to see that you have a really clear idea of how you're going to address your research questions. Show that you understand the core tenets of your chosen approach in great depth. Do not rely simply on general research methods textbooks as justification for your chosen methods. So for example, Robson 2009 says that interviews are good because. Instead, justify your methodological approach in the context of related empirical studies. Compare the following two examples. In the first example, a rather general statement about interviews as a research method has been cited from a well-known research methods textbook. There's no discussion of why, specifically, interviews are the most suitable method for data collection in this project particularly. Furthermore, there's no sense of how this decision has been informed by other empirical work in the field. Overall, therefore, it's insufficient. In the second example, however, there's brief background offered about the selected method, so its previous uses in related empirical work, and a statement about its applicability to the specific study. This, again, is the kind of detail we expect to see in a good research proposal. You may wish to indicate a research timeline as part of your proposal, in which case, do think very carefully about the key stages of the whole research process as they relate very specifically to your own proposed project. Do not rely on template examples available on the internet without thinking critically about their applicability for the project that you're outlining. For many projects, it might make sense that year 1 focuses on reading widely around relevant literature to understand the field as deeply as possible, before going on to collect data in the second year, and then focusing on analysis and writing up in the third year. Having a very vague and general timeline which follows this structure doesn't really add anything to your proposal. If you do include a timeline, make sure that it's thought through very specifically in reference to the various unique stages of the project itself. Compare the following two examples. The first example is an admittedly extreme illustration of the kind of minimal detail that we often see when students include a timeline for their research. The second example, just focusing on year one of a typical PhD just to illustrate, goes into a great deal more detail about the likely steps that will need to be taken to complete this programme of research specifically. If you do wish to include a timeline, we'd expect it to be as detailed and thought through as the second example. I hope this information will prove useful for you as you develop your own proposal. Once you've considered how you'll put into practice what you've learned from this video, your next steps will be to read all of the information on our webpage thoroughly, paying particular attention to the further guidance notes on proposal writing, the application deadlines for this academic year, and the various stages in the application process. Contact the email address you can see on the screen with any questions about the process prior to submitting your application. Thank you for watching.